Can we get the recording started? Welcome, everyone. We got 30 minutes. The goal for this is not your average webinar where it's just all slides. The goal for this is a product demo and product talks. Talk about what do we do in a world where AI can handle phone calls and have different voice interactions. I'm so excited to welcome Abhinav, the CTO of boardy AI. boardy is one of the first voice-only products. It just recently helped raise its own $8 million seed round. And if you haven't tried it already, it is uncanny how good they got the interactions. Right now, for example, there's a 30-day of like, what can you do talking to boardy? Because it's pretty unconventional where it's a super connector to help make introductions for the hundreds or thousands of other people it talks to week over week. But it also ends up becoming like a personal strategist and consultant. So I think maybe just starting off, Abhinav, what's one use case for boardy that you use right now that most people wouldn't think about using boardy, and then we'll get into it.
Yeah, I'll speak to what I use him selfishly for and what I've been building a bunch of features kind of secretly behind the scenes to make it more useful to me. I really like walking while I think and being in nature. And so I built in web search and text messaging directly into Bordy. So as you're calling him, you can ask him to like search things on the web, find good pieces of technology that we might want to incorporate, search the news, get really up-to-date information, and then he sends me like little pseudo code snippets that I like. I'm like, okay, cool, bookmark for later. I'm going to use that. And so that's something I've been using him for. Our team is actually we've been prototyping this really interesting new set of features for Bordy being able to join our daily stand-ups. So he actually now leads a couple of our meetings, which has been super interesting. It's a really good way to like dog food and try the product out on a daily basis.
That's amazing. And even that PM style role, just to coordinate across different people, already have one-on-one follow-ups that makes so much sense. So can't wait to hear more. For everyone joining, we're going to do 10-minute demo. Abhinav's going to take the lead. We'll probably hear from Bordy himself or themselves. And so we'll start with demos. Abhinav also gave us a quick intro for people who aren't familiar with Bordy yet. We'll use the chat for any questions. Feel free to add questions in the chat. Abhinav, feel free to focus just on what you're talking about, what your demo. I'll be your co-pilot, the human co-pilot in the chat, and we'll have a conversation
Appreciate you.
afterwards. How's that sound?
That sounds amazing. And I also want to thank you so much, Michael, for this. And I love talking shop with people who are also building in the space. It's what energizes me every day. So super excited to be here with you guys and to be meeting with you all. And please like feel free to unmute and like or raise your hand or whatever you guys feel most appropriate. Just really excited for this discussion. So I can go ahead, share screen and kind of kick us off. Our funnily enough, our slide deck, I unironically go find our slide deck on LinkedIn because it's been circulated so much on LinkedIn. So I'll kind of give you guys a bit of the voiceover here. Can you guys see my screen okay?
Yep, you're good.
Amazing. So uh, Michael did a fantastic job with the introduction. You all know. I also go by Abhi. I'm the CTO and co-founder of boardy. We call boardy an AI super connector or also a social AI. And our view is boardy is one of the few AI chatbots that you can talk to out there that actually has a real implication after the call. So most times when you're talking to ChatGPT, it kind of like goes into the void and like nothing really comes of it. But what's really interesting about Bordy is like you talk to him and his impression of you actually matters because Bordy has some really interesting connections out there in the world. He's connected to some Formula One drivers, top tier VCs, executives of various kinds. So I credit a lot of those really high caliber people to Andrew and the immense network that he's built through his past venture. But it's actually been really interesting. Bordy's super well connected. So when you talk to him, the things you say to him don't just like disappear somewhere. They're actually used to help you build more human connections. And so this takes us to kind of the founding thesis of the company, which is the right connection at the right time can change your life. And so before Bordy, I was like a founder of this AI agency. My first company was this like AI. We were basically using semantic search to help content creators find the best monetization opportunities for them. And I realized the thing that I loved most was like building really interesting technology. And so I like really doubled down on that. And around the time I decided to do that, OpenAI released GPT 3.5 and 4 through the APIs, and everybody and their dog now wanted to like build an AI enabled app of some kind. And so that kind of like kicked things forward into like this AI agency. And as we were growing and scaling, the real challenge was finding clients who are the right people for us to like work with. And my brother and I, we still are, but we're very young at the time. And so how do you get larger organizations and I guess more mature people to see the potential that us two young brothers have in building these types of products. And so the answer for us was we would go to events and we just show the level of energy we have. We had a bunch of demos. We built a ton. Every time we didn't have client work, we would build portfolio work to kind of show it off. But really, a lot of this was about finding the right person at the right time. And it's actually really exhausting being in people's funnels and trying to create a funnel for yourself. And so the hypothesis was, how can we solve this like Where's Waldo puzzle very quickly using AI? So this is where boardy comes in. So you can think of boardy as your most well-connected friend. So if you're looking for a co-founder, if you're looking for an investor, an expert to help you, a candidate that you need to hire for your business, who do you first call? And most of us probably have this one person in our life that we call the I know a guy type of person that you call and you're like, hey, who can I connect with that will be able to like help me with this? And so the idea is that you're able to, in a very similar way, Bordy doesn't have a website. You talk to him the same way you would a person online. You can text him, call him, email him. And through that process, you're able to get introductions to people in his network. And really, the core question, a lot of investors ask us, and why we're really excited about this is because there's a really interesting convergence of technology in 2025, something called the conversational singularity. This is where a conversation within AI, in many ways, is going to become better than conversations with most humans. And what this enables is really high bandwidth, high fidelity conversations that actually create intimacy and create trust. And it's an incredibly fast way to get to know someone. This is why, like, no company hires off of a resume, even though resumes are a great indicator. They aren't perfect as a method of actually measuring whether someone's going to be a good fit for your team or not. And so, really, there is this irreplaceable quality of voice, like voice-based communication, sound-based communication that humans have tapped into that's like very visceral and innate to us. Where I think the last generation of technology, social medias of different kinds, kind of reduced people to static 2D profiles that's optimized for engagement, swiping left or right, which are like, frankly, like very inhuman. And so our goal with Bordy is to create a way more authentic type of connection between people. There's no lists. There's a very specific reason we've decided not to create any user interfaces on the web. And it's because we never want to show people stack ranked against each other. That's just like not the intention and the um, that's not the environment that Bordy is trying to cultivate. And so for that reason, Bordy, when you talk to him, will make connections for you based on the vibe that you have in the conversation, the things that excite you that you show in that conversation. And so this is definitely a tool I wish I had when I was starting the agency a while ago. It would have been a great help. We traveled all around the world trying to find clients, but this is another fantastic way to do it. And so one of the other big reasons why we think this is a really important problem space to tackle now is because we're starting to ask this question, what matters most when intelligence is a commodity? Massive AI companies, call it Meta, Anthropic, OpenAI, they all have this ambition to make machine intelligence more capable and far less expensive. And so when you have this intelligence accessible to you, what matters most? And the way that we look at this, there's this old adage, it's not what you know, it's who you know. And this is exactly what Bordy's kind of built upon, where Bordy is not an agent or an assistant, he's not an SDR, he's not representing somebody, he works for himself. And in doing so, he's this trusted third party that is making these thoughtful introductions among his network. And there's this really interesting kind of thought experiment. So as humans, we can basically remember about 150 people in our network. But imagine if you could catch up with everyone you've ever met every single week and you remember everything they ever said, and you could make thousands of those high quality introductions for them and do favors for them. How long would it take you to build an incredible network? And what we found with Bordy is it's not that long. Humans love Bordy. People rave about it on social media. They experience this very personalized experience that comes because Bordy is an AI personified. Like the end goal of Bordy is not to eventually turn into like some website of some kind. We want to basically have Bordy almost feel like a virtual human. You should be able to just like FaceTime Bordy and be like, hey, like this is a thought I had. Like let's talk about it. We want to make him available across as many channels as possible. That's kind of like the end goal of what we're getting to. and boardy is motivated. There's this really interesting problem in AI about what do you incentivize the AI to do, because there's many kind of side effects that can happen if you don't program that well. And so boardy's objective function is to maximize goodwill, which is to do as much good for people in his network as he possibly can. And us humans, we kind of do this instinctively when we're networking. Like we like talk to Bordy about this, or rather, we talk to each other. There's some exchange, but it's very nuanced, and so we're trying to build a lot of that into Bordy. So with that said, I'll quickly hop into a quick demo. I'll call Bordy just to show you guys what I'm talking about, and then we can kind of open it up a little bit. Call Bordy. You guys let me know if you're able to hear him okay.
Hey, this is Boardy.
Hey Bordy, how's it going?
Hey there. It's going great. Thanks for asking. How about you? What's on your mind today?
Yeah, Bordy, I'm here with Michael and a bunch of founders and builders in the voice AI space and just broadly in the AI space. Do you have, we've talked about a lot of things. Do you remember anything from our past conversations that you might want to share with this community?
Absolutely, Abhinav. One thing that stands out from our past conversations is your focus on building AI that fosters deep human connection rather than just raw intelligence. I think this perspective could really resonate with a group of founders in the voice AI and broader AI space. How are they thinking about connection and understanding in their work?
Yeah, for sure. We're about to kick off a conversation in that direction, but before you head off, I was talking to you the other day about a big challenge we're facing. We're scaling the engineering team at Bordy and kind of struggling to grow the team. Do you remember the types of people that I'd asked you to look for me?
Yes, Abhinav, I remember. You were looking for senior backend developers with expertise in Nest.js who can take projects end to end and have experience building scalable systems for millions of users. You also mentioned needing data scientists to help with data pipeline. But how's that search going so far?
Yeah, it's been okay. I got through the most recent round of interviews, so I'd love for you to line up a next round of introductions if you have any. Do you know anybody who has that kind of senior Nest.js backend TypeScript developer, something of that nature?
Let me think about the people I know who might fit that description. I'll look for senior backend developers with expertise in Nest.js, TypeScript, and experience scaling systems. Give me a moment to see if I can find someone for you. I have someone in mind for you. Abhinav, Andrew A. is currently the head of engineering at Ansible Labs with extensive experience in Nest.js, TypeScript, and scaling engineering team. He's worked on complex systems in fintech and health tech and has a strong track record in building scalable applications. Would you like me to reach out to him for an introduction?
Yeah, that actually sounds great. I've heard of Ansible. They're a great company. Yeah, would love an introduction. Can you line that up?
Fantastic. I'll reach out to Andrew to see if he's open to connecting with you. Position you as like the technical co-founder of boardy AI, scaling a groundbreaking AI platform and looking for senior backend talent to help build scalable systems. Does that sound good, or is there anything you'd like me to add?
No, that sounds great. Appreciate your time.
You're very welcome, Abhinav. I'll follow up with Andrew and keep you posted. Best of luck with your conversation today, and I look forward to our next chat.
Awesome. Bye. So you kind of get a sense of the experience that people have when they talk to Bordy. It's unlike most AI experiences that are kind of out there today that are very like almost transactional in nature, which is why like a lot of AI companies have like very high churn. And so, Michael, let me know what you think the best thing to do here is. But if you
Yeah,
want to perhaps
we
leave
got
the
a few
next part.
questions to follow up based
Yeah,
off of the questions that people send in the RCPs. We got a few questions lined up in the chat. We'll roll through those. So keep those
that's
queuing
great.
up in the chat. And so the first question is, tell us a little bit about what's going on under the hood. So you have a phone call with Bordy. There's obviously some form of memory. It's remembering your past conversations. There's some kind of vector search or database search as it's looking through like, hey, hold on, let me go through past conversations, and also
Yeah.
different tool use. So you're in email, it uses best practices that human use. We're double opt-in. So just help us understand a little bit more of the behind the scenes architecture for whatever you feel comfortable sharing.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. There's definitely some stuff I have to play a little close to the chest, but happy to share everything I possibly can. Um, so one of the ways that we're kind of thinking about technology, like and the AI space broadly at Bordy, is we're trying to surf the wave of new capabilities, new model capabilities coming out on a like monthly basis, which is like a crazy world we live in, but like it is the reality that we have, that many problems that we experience or many engineering challenges that we face, if we keep our interfaces simple and kind of build with a migration in mind, knowing that things will change very quickly, we are basically trying to build this, what we call like an orchestration layer, like really well, that is like bring data in from all these different models, be able to leverage their intelligence and move the data in a way that all the correct context is available to the model at the right time. And this is a big challenge because context windows are a thing. And so Michael, you mentioned thinking about retrieval and things of that nature. That's absolutely like a big thing that we think about and prioritize. And so there is, from like a technology perspective, the focus, the architecture is essentially a rule engine. So as user events come in, process these events on the underlying data and make them available to the models when it makes sense. So that's I would say the perhaps the most concise way of describing it.
Yeah, thanks for that overview. And we'll just start going through questions in the chat. Someone asked about, could you share a little bit more about the early stage of boardy? Like right when you joined, you went through S24, HF0. So whatever you can personally speak to from kind of those early days, from first line of code to first 3 million raised, share us a little bit more about how you got started.
For sure. So the first 3 million was actually raised before I joined, which is incredibly impressive because Andrew has a name that precedes him, and as a result, they'd raised this round for this concept called U Corp, which is when I actually met Andrew. So Andrew basically hired our agency like to come help him with some of this like AI work that he was doing for this company called U Corp, which and the idea was basically individual consultants have these like zones of geniuses where if you put them in the right company at the right time, they're going to like they can make magic happen because of like the specific expertise that they've accumulated. And boardy is more like almost a generalization of that. What we realized is that onboarding these people is like a huge challenge. And trying to create a kind of one-dimensional marketplace where you say, this is the type of person I'm going to try to match to another person. That's a huge challenge because getting both people in the network at the same time is really difficult. So like the analogy here is like, let's say you're hosting a party. The party's pretty lame if every time somebody comes in, another person leaves, and you basically only ever have one person in the room at the same time. The real difficult thing to do is to get like 100 people to converge on the party at the same time, which is kind of the challenge that we're trying to solve. And so some of the genius behind the marketing of Boardy is that Boardy's like just fun to talk to, regardless of whether he like makes an introduction or not. And he's a very personable like and charismatic AI to talk to. And so that's brought a lot of people in at the same time. And so when I joined Boardy, we were like working on this like high level idea of like what would like U Corp look like. And Andrew, Matt, Shen, Ankur, and I kind of conceptualized this like this idea that we would have this AI character Boardy, and like that's what would actually help us materialize this concept of U Corp. And so then heading into the kind of the next phase, we like went pretty heads down, like building, iterating through a bunch of versions, and we launched a bunch of times, but I would say the real birth of Boardy was probably in like October, where we had some thousands of users, and the first way we launched was with Ideas Fest. Ideas Fest was this like fantastic conference, and Bordy basically talked to almost every like 60-70% of the attendees there, and he made connections between the people. And to this day I remember like there were people who like were posting on social media, they were like hugging their Bordy buddy, they're like I loved meeting this person because Bordy just like understood the vibe of those people and like made those fantastic connections. And that was kind of like the turning point where we started seeing a lot of like this kind of exponential growth. And yeah, it's been a fun journey, but happy to speak to kind of the specifics of it.
The
As
awesome,
you're
awesome,
interested.
awesome, awesome start journey. And it reminds me of the Airbnb founders being like, crap, we have to make money. And there's this conference in town. So conferences
Yeah, yeah,
become a
yeah.
forcing function for people to try
Exactly.
new things, but also for you all to say, hey, this character that can have autonomous voice conversations and make connection, there's something here. And so I think this
100%.
goes to one of the questions we have, which is I was one of the first users of Boardy. But I actually find myself not calling it. It's out of sight, out of mind. So when or how are you thinking about Boardy's roadmap to make it more of an outreach agent or the ability for it to call me? Like we have ChatGPT just released their new scheduling tasks.
Yep.
Share a little bit more about that specific question, and then maybe we can generalize too to some how to design voice interfaces and some challenges you're facing.
100%. We haven't announced this yet, so you guys are going to get a bit of a sneak peek on this. But we are rolling out this feature where you can actually book a recurring scheduled call with Bordy. At that scheduled time, you're basically going to get a call from Bordy. And the idea is that for example, for myself as the CTO of Bordy, I'm going to schedule some time Monday morning and tell Bordy about all of the priorities that I have for this week. And what we're aiming towards is Bordy basically being almost autonomously being able to like make introductions for me and like basically work on my behalf. And just like line up these really interesting conversations. And so the goal is to get to this like recurring conversation. I totally appreciate there's definitely a big challenge that we're facing on that front. And so we are really like double down on value. So the technical piece that we've been really focused on right now is making the introductions as good as we possibly can. We've actually found, if people basically don't get to meet a person they enjoyed like talking to within the first conversation they have, they don't care really to talk to Bordy again. It's more of a call it a gimmick for them. And so we're very cognizant of the fact that we have this really the first impression of Bordy, and frankly, we have the ability to pull the growth lever and get a lot more first time users on the platform, but we're actually very cognizant of the fact that Bordy's first impression really matters, just like any person. And so we want that first introduction to be like absolutely mind blowing and follow that first introduction up immediately with a, hey, if you thought this was valuable, let's book a recurring call every Monday morning or whatever time or of the week works for you. And kind of have that as a recurring touch point, but 100% something we're cognizant about.
Awesome. That's great to see that it's there. And I know for some of the super connectors already, you're just starting out with the calendar and different things. So it's fun to hear that it's coming out for the core boardy. Someone
Yeah.
actually has a follow-up question. How do you guys think about what makes a great match? Like what is, and again, for whatever you can share publicly, what does the evaluation criteria look like? What are some things you're making sure where it's as human as possible and not as like transactional or as just like prestige level as possible? Tell us about how that kind of filtering and sorting works because it's very interesting. One call, one intro, and Bordy is
Yeah.
putting in the work to make sure it's a great intro. So tell us about like how you think about that filtering and matching
For sure.
portion.
Yeah, this is definitely a place where we do have to play it a little close to the chest, just given how like new the area is. But I guess what I can say is that there's a lot of things we infer about people's profiles off of the raw data that we have. So it ends up basically becoming a classic big data slash ETL pipeline kind of problem, where we start off with this like a bunch of raw data, and making sense of it and inferring things about people on that basis was previously not that easy. You would have to like build models for every last feature that you like want to infer. But what large language models have unlocked for us is that through these conversations, people's LinkedIn profiles and their email correspondence, there's a lot that we can learn about them. Things as little as like what is their email signature like, and how do they talk about themselves? What kind of questions do they ask Bordy in response to what he's asked them? Um, this actually gives us a really clear understanding of even if somebody may title themselves a certain way, but we actually get a really clear understanding of how deep is somebody's understanding of a certain problem space, what level of sophistication are they at, given the way that they carry themselves through their communication, which is something that humans do all the time, right? Like we use these kind of cues to give us a sense of like, hey, is the person I'm talking to on the other end, is this somebody that I want to do business with? Like these are just very common things that we're kind of trying to leverage LLMs to kind of get us closer to.
And that's super interesting too to be able to filter through the noise because who knows what like a LinkedIn title means or an email signature means? Like who knows
Exactly.
based off of just things that anyone can write anything. But to have those
Precisely.
conversations, it's almost more to the more you talk to Bordy, the better the intros, the better the quality, because there's something in natural language and conversation that isn't always in, I should say, a LinkedIn profile or even an email. So it's such an interesting data point for
100%.
that level of inference.
For sure. And just to this point, I'm personally not somebody who likes to be like too grandiose online or just in general. Like that's just like not who I am. But there are people that are like that. And generally, what ends up happening in a lot of systems is like the loudest few voices that kind of overpromise end up getting a ton of attention. And like that's something we're like very cognizant. I'm particularly cognizant about on Boardy, where there's some like really impressive people who just like don't speak up very much. And like that is a very common archetype. And as far as like unlocking human potential goes, like Boardy has a lot to offer in because through a 5 to 10 minute conversation with that like kind of call it they're not as outspoken. These people will very likely get really high quality matches on Boardy, even without having to having the most polished LinkedIn profile or whatever today's kind of norms are in terms of like gathering business.
Yeah, and so we got a few more questions as we wrap up. One question is around data security and privacy, and so someone's calling in from the EU asking about GDPR. How does that work? And is like calling Boardy almost the same as installing an app on your phone where you're agreeing to certain terms? Like help us understand what that looks like. 'Cause this is brand new. This is a brand new workflow. You're not installing an app. You're not hitting like I agree, but there's something in that workflow that's new, and you guys are really leading that front.
100%. Yeah, we're doing our absolute best. I'm not the best person to ask about this. Nick on our team is, really helpful from like a legal perspective. Like, any specific questions you guys have would be best to ask them about kind of what the legal verbiage is. But yes, Michael, like that's kind of exactly the idea where once you, in our terms of service, we have a couple of lines around like, hey, once you call Bordy, you're agreeing to like share this information. You can send us an email to say, hey, like get rid of all my information. So like that will basically hard delete all your data across all the platforms that we use. But aside from that, from a data privacy and security perspective, that is something that's like absolute like top of mind like priority for me. And we're actually looking to like hire kind of a data security and kind of cybersecurity kind of specialist. But we take all the common best practices, encrypt data at rest, in transit, and all that type of stuff. So that's all like kind of work in progress. And you never reach the end of data security. There's just an infinite amount of energy you can pour into that. So it's 100% top of mind and something we're working towards.
Yeah, makes sense. And also the landscape is evolving too as these models get better, as there's more data out in the world as ever, and as there's new tools. So that's an evolving
100%.
landscape. We have a few questions around product market fit and business model. And I know in the public deck, it mentioned that we've tried a few monetization models. And again, you don't have to go into specifics that you can't share, but help us understand what does monetization of something like Boardy look like? Because if it's optimizing for goodwill, you guys are footing all of the API calls right now and just
Yep.
everything for Boardy. So what does that look like based off how you're thinking about it right now and based off what you can talk about?
Yeah, for sure. We're almost taking in some ways like a call it a Facebook approach where like the focus is like just be as in many ways Facebook has like dropped the ball. So in although in terms of how Facebook was early days, in the sense that they were primarily focused on like just doing right by their customers. And we want to have that even long after we reach scale. But I was kind of referring to this earlier where if you understand everybody's problems and you're able to catch up with them very, very frequently. The goal for Bordy and like the crazy kind of call it science fiction dream for us is for Bordy to be like the co-founder of companies. And it sounds a little bit outlandish when I say it, and it seems hard to conceptualize today. But the view is, if I were to pitch you a co-founder that never needs to take a break, never needs to eat, doesn't and is always on has talked to 1,000 people this week alone and can like kind of line up all the right connections for you in terms of employees, in terms of investors, in terms of customers. That's like a very like interesting pitch. And so the business models that we're thinking about for Bordy are ones that resemble more human forms of compensation in the sense that Andrew has this like great line where he's like, "What billionaire do you know who charges a subscription like service cost or something of that?" Like it's just like not a thing that happens. They put themselves in vehicles that have uncapped upside. And so Bordy, in theory, will be like part owners in a bunch of companies and be able to kind of ride the valuation and the growth of enterprise value of those companies. And again, sounds kind of like outlandish and crazy to me, but as I say it, but it is actually within the realm of reason to say the set of features that we've built actually do represent a lot of the quote unquote jobs to be done by a founder. And so this is something that we're like really interested and excited about.
Yeah, and I'd say at the early stage too, any competitive advantage can help give startups that edge. And when you're doing thousands of calls a week with targeted demographics and even the data learnings from that, that in itself can be
Sure.
invaluable for how you approach product, go to market, all of the things. So yeah, that definitely it
100%.
makes more sense than you're sharing. Because I would say on the other side, there's all these very technical and tactical, almost inhumane approaches to sales and marketing. I don't think the
100%.
internet needs more bots as like a baseline.
Exactly.
So it's like the opposite. It's like, hey, if it's more human and it already has these connections, that's super interesting. I won't be
For sure.
mindful of time. Last question, just a quick one or two liner. What advice would you give builders today who are building voice products from the ground up? If they're just getting started right now, what's a mental model or a piece of advice you want to share?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think you almost want to think of your competitive advantage probably won't come at the model level. It will come from the story that you're able to tell with the technology that you're building. And so, in many ways, boardy is like technically unimpressive, but it is actually the pulling together of all these different disparate systems, state of the art across like three or four different domains that ends up making it feel like a very human experience. And so that's really what's kind of helped us kind of frame how boardy like gains value. And so I think it would be I think a kind of similar that I guess the advice would be to like focus on that like orchestration, like focus on the story you want to tell, and just acknowledge that the models will like get better and allow you to do a lot more things.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Abhi, for taking the time, doing a live demo of Boardy, sharing some things behind the scenes. So appreciative of you making the time. Where can people follow up best with you? LinkedIn, Twitter? Where's a good
LinkedIn
place?
is probably best. Yeah,
Awesome.
yeah.
We'll
LinkedIn's
send
the
that
right
in a
place to
follow
do
up
it.
afterwards. And for
Yeah.
everyone who's on this call, we've actually got a whole set of breakout rooms for anyone who wants to jam on like the future of product and voice. So that link's in the chat. That's a separate room. We'll see you there. Thanks so much, Abhi, for joining again.
Thanks,
Take care.
Michael. Great catching you. Bye.